What I actually said to Denzel was, "You're that brilliant young actor just out of Fordham University."
In the tough world of Hollywood, Denzel Washington is the undisputed gold standard, a man of iron discipline and dignity. However, even legends have their limits. When professional boundaries are blurred or respect is traded for gimmicks, Denzel doesn't just get even, he cuts ties. Today, we're unmasking the co-stars who learned the hard way to never cross the king again. To survive in this industry, you have to know when to be silent, because one actor found himself wondering if he had accidentally made a lifelong enemy. 6. Liev Schreiber, the disliked one. Liev Schreiber is the kind of guy who usually knows exactly how to handle a room. With a voice that sounds like rolling thunder and a theater background that commands respect, he is not easily intimidated. Most audiences recognize him as the star of Ray Donovan.
The Ray Donovan series ran for a huge 7 seasons, starring Liev Schreiber as Ray Donovan.
Or for his incredible narration in sports documentaries. He is a heavyweight in the industry who has worked with everyone. However, back in 1999, when he was still building the massive reputation he has today, Liev landed a role in a powerful film called The Hurricane, which followed the true story of a boxer named Rubin Carter, who was wrongfully imprisoned. This movie was a massive project, and it meant going head-to-head with a man who was already a living legend. Now, working with a hero can go one of two ways. It can be a life-changing lesson or a total disaster that leaves you wanting to quit the business. For Liev, the experience felt like the latter. And as we know, Denzel Washington is famous for his preparation. And for this specific movie, he was in a zone that few people could enter. He had transformed his body and his mind to become a man who had been locked away for years. This meant that the friendly, charming Denzel was nowhere to be found on that set. Instead, there was a man who was quiet, focused, and what Liev would later describe as tetchy. The environment on The Hurricane was incredibly tense. Liev played a reporter who was trying to help free the boxer. In their scenes together, the energy was thick with a cold, professional distance. Every time Liev tried to bridge the gap or start a conversation between takes, he was met with a wall. It was not a violent or loud type of anger. It was something much more uncomfortable, like a sharp, dismissive energy that made Liev feel like he was constantly doing something wrong. He spent months on that production, convinced that the biggest actor in Hollywood genuinely hated him. He felt like he was walking on eggshells every single day, trying to do his job without causing a scene. This feeling of being disliked stuck with Liev for a very long time. In the world of acting, your reputation and your relationships are everything. If you believe a titan of the industry hates you, it can haunt your confidence. As Liev finished the film and went on with his career, he always carried that memory of the co-star who seemingly had a grudge against him. He assumed he had missed some unwritten rule of set etiquette, or that their personalities simply did not mesh. The truth finally surfaced 5 years later, in a way that no one saw coming. Denzel was getting ready to lead the 2004 remake of The Manchurian Candidate. This was a high-stakes thriller, and the director needed someone who could stand their ground against Denzel's legendary intensity. Without any hesitation, it was Denzel himself who told the director that Liev Schreiber was the only man for the job. He had not hated Liev at all. He had been so impressed by Liev's talent and his ability to handle a difficult environment that he specifically requested to work with him again. He wanted a partner who was as serious about the craft as he was. This revelation completely flipped the script on their relationship. It showed that what Liev perceived as hatred was actually the ultimate form of professional respect. Denzel was not there to be a friend or a mentor during The Hurricane. He was there to be Rubin Carter. Liev later mentioned that he was extremely shocked at the recommendation. But while Schreiber thought he was hated, our next actor brought a brand of dedication that Denzel found downright exhausting. 5. Jared Leto, The Method Mania. Once anyone hears Jared Leto, You just know this name usually comes with a lot of baggage on a movie set. He is known for diving so deep into his roles that he forgets where he ends and the character begins.
He is a talented, Oscar-winning actor, a successful musician, director, and just a person who has a rich inner world.
This approach is called method acting, and it often involves staying in character for months at a time. While some people think this is a sign of a genius at work, Denzel has a very different perspective. In 2021, the two stars were cast in a dark crime thriller titled The Little Things. Denzel played a burned-out deputy, while Leto played a creepy prime suspect. When we watched the movie, it was a dream pairing. However, in reality, it was a collision of two completely different worlds. You know, Leto arrived on set with his usual reputation for being difficult. During previous projects, such as Saki Squad, he reportedly sent strange and gross gifts to his co-stars to stay in character. He would act out, cause disruptions, and demand that everyone treat him like the person he was playing. This kind of behavior is often seen as a way to provoke a reaction or create tension. However, when you are standing across from a man who has 2 Oscars and 4 decades of experience, those tricks do not work. Denzel does not need to stay in character all day to give a great performance. He uses a technique called internalization. He does the emotional work in his head and turns it on the moment the director yells action. Also, the atmosphere between the two became a major talking point in the industry. People were waiting to see if Leto would try his usual stunts with a legend. When asked about it later, Denzel gave a response that was both sharp and incredibly revealing. He told reporters that Leto did not try any of that with him. This was a subtle way of saying that Leto's method acting is a choice he makes for people he can intimidate. Denzel does not view this style as a sign of true dedication. Instead, he sees it as a crutch. He believes that if you need to act crazy off camera to be a good actor on camera, you are not doing the actual work. This difference in philosophy created a cold and distant vibe during the production. Denzel views acting as a serious job that requires precision and control. He thinks the goal is to connect with the audience, not to make your co-workers feel uncomfortable. Leto's style felt more like a circus to him. During the limited promotion for The Little Things, the lack of warmth between the two was hard to ignore. They respected each other's talent, yet they rarely spent time with each other. Denzel's presence on set was about excellence, while Leto's was about theatrics. The final movie shows the results of this clash. Denzel's performance is grounded and incredibly real. He pulls the audience in with small movements and quiet intensity. On the other hand, Leto's performance feels much more like a show. This contrast highlighted exactly why Denzel found the whole process tiring. He was trying to tell a human story, while his co-star was busy trying to be a spectacle. This experience reinforced Denzel's belief that true craft comes from within, not from a collection of strange habits. To him, the camera can always tell when someone is being authentic and when they are putting on a mask. For Denzel, acting is work, not a circus. But what happens when a co-star tries to reinvent the script entirely? This was the exact question everyone was asking when Denzel Washington signed on to work with Mark Wahlberg. 4. Mark Wahlberg, The Chaos of Improv. Most people know Mark as the tough guy from Boston who worked his way up from being a pop star to one of the biggest action heroes in the world. He is famous for movies where he plays the fast-talking, high-energy lead, such as The Departed or The Fighter.
Hey, I forgot the password, but if you want to come down to the garage with me, I'd be happy to give it to you.
Cleaning is dead.
He has a very loose style that feels very natural to the audience. He is the kind of performer who likes to show up, catch the vibe of the room, and then play around with his lines to keep things feeling fresh and spontaneous. In 2013, these two very different performers were paired up for a high-octane movie called Two Guns. In the movie, it looked like a perfect match. You had the legendary veteran and the energetic superstar. However, the problems started as soon as the first table read began. Denzel treats the script like it is a holy book, He spends weeks analyzing every single word and punctuation mark before he ever steps onto a set. To him, the writer's work is the foundation of the entire story. If you change a word without a good reason, you weaken the structure of the performance. Wahlberg had a completely different approach because he preferred to use the script as a general guide rather than a set of strict rules. As filming progressed, reports began to leak out about the friction happening behind the scenes. Wahlberg was used to being the guy who dominated every conversation. He tried to use his quick wit to out-talk Denzel during their scenes together. He would add jokes or change the timing of his responses to catch Denzel off guard. However, Denzel did not see this as being creative. He saw it as a total lack of preparation. In his mind, if you have to make things up as you go, it means you did not do the hard work before you arrived at the studio. This clash of personalities caused a noticeable shift in the energy of the production. While the characters in the movie were supposed to be best friends, the actors were struggling to find a common rhythm. Denzel has very high standards for his co-workers and expects everyone to be as disciplined as he is. When Wahlberg would treat a scene casually, it felt like a lack of respect for the process. Mark Wahlberg also admitted that sometimes Denzel would just look at him and say, "Did you really just say that?" So, the chemistry you see on the screen in Two Guns might look fun, yet many insiders say it felt forced because of the stress happening when the cameras were off. Wahlberg would eventually admit that working with Denzel was an opportunity to go at the best. He described the experience as intimidating and intense. He realized very quickly that he could not coast on his charm when he was standing next to a master of the craft. It was a tough lesson for a man who was used to being the biggest star in every room he walked into. Even though the film was a commercial success and made a decent profit, we never got to see Two Guns 2. In Hollywood, a hit movie usually gets a sequel within a few years, and the fact that these two have not teamed up again may suggest that the professional rift was deeper than anyone realized. Wahlberg eventually learned the rhythm, but our next actor committed the ultimate sin. He spoke out against the man who paved the way. 3. Tyrese Gibson, the gatekeeper. Accusation. Tyrese Gibson is a man who wears his heart on his sleeve, which has made him both a fan favorite and a frequent headline maker. He started out as a singer in a famous commercial before becoming a major movie star in films such as Baby Boy and the Fast and the Furious franchise. For years, Tyrese was very vocal about his deep respect for Denzel Washington. He saw Denzel as the primary blueprint for what a black man could achieve in the industry. He wanted that same level of respect and often spoke about how much he looked up to the veteran actor as a potential mentor. The relationship took a sharp turn into uncomfortable territory around 2015. Tyrese decided to take his thoughts to Instagram, which is the one place Denzel almost never goes. In a series of passionate posts, Tyrese suggested that the elite black actors in Hollywood were closing the door behind them. He used the term gatekeepers to describe the stars at the very top who were not doing enough to pull up the next generation. While he did not mention Denzel by name in every single post, the message was loud and clear to everyone in the business. He was frustrated with a lack of mentorship and felt that the legendary figures were protecting their own territory rather than sharing their wisdom. This public venting created a massive firestorm on social media. Fans were divided, yet the industry was mostly shocked that someone would speak out so boldly against the foundation of modern black cinema. The problem was that the narrative from Tyrese did not match the reality of Denzel's actions. Denzel does not broadcast his good deeds or use them for PR points. For example, he quietly paid the tuition for a young student named Chadwick Boseman to attend a prestigious acting program at Oxford in the 1990s. He has spent millions of dollars funding schools and helping young artists behind the scenes without ever asking for a thank you. Denzel believes that true mentorship is done in private, while Tyrese was looking for something much more public and immediate. The decision to air these grievances on the internet effectively ended any chance of these two ever working together on a project. In Denzel's world, loyalty and discretion are the most valuable traits you can have. By going public with his complaints, Tyrese broke a major code of silence that exists among high-level professionals. In the inner circles of Hollywood, this was viewed as a bridge-burning move that could not be undone. You do not get to criticize the king on a public platform and then expect a seat at his table. Denzel's reaction to the drama was exactly what most people expected, which was total silence. He did not post a rebuttal or go on a talk show to defend himself. He continued his work, proving that his legacy spoke louder than any social media caption. He showed that you do not have to explain yourself to people who do not understand your process. The aftermath of this situation left Tyrese on the outside of Denzel's professional circle. It was a huge lesson that there is a massive difference between wanting a mentor and being ready for the discipline that comes with it. Public outbursts on social media are one thing, but standing your ground face-to-face against a powerful filmmaker is where the real stakes are found. 2. Quentin Tarantino, a long feud. Some people avoid conflict at all costs when their career is on the line, but Denzel Washington is built differently. He has never been afraid to speak his mind, even if it means clashing with the most famous directors in the world. This was never more evident than when he crossed paths with Quentin Tarantino. Most movie fans know Tarantino as the fast-talking, high-energy director behind massive hits such as Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah, but Mr. Brown, that's a little too close to Mr. Shit.
Mr. Pink sounds like Mr. Pussy. How about if I'm Mr. Purple?
He is a man who changed the way movies sound with his sharp and often controversial dialogue. By the mid-90s, he was the hottest writer in town, and studios were paying him millions to fix their scripts. In 1995, Tarantino was hired as a script doctor to add some flavor to the dialogue of a submarine thriller called Crimson Tide. Denzel was the star of the movie, and he quickly noticed that some of the new lines had a very specific and uncomfortable tone. Tarantino had added several racially charged jokes and references that Denzel felt had no business being in the film. While many actors might have stayed quiet to avoid making waves with a director who was at the peak of his power, Denzel chose a different path. He decided to handle the situation right then and there. He did not wait for a private meeting or have his agent make a phone call to the studio. Instead, Denzel walked onto the set and confronted Tarantino in front of the entire cast and crew. Witnesses from the production say the air in the room turned ice cold the moment the two men locked eyes. Denzel made it very clear that he was not okay with the racist language being used, and that he found the additions to the script offensive. It was a massive moment because it showed that even a visionary like Tarantino was not immune to Denzel's standards for respect. This was not a small disagreement over a character choice. It was a battle over the soul of the movie and the message it was sending to the audience. Denzel was not there to just play a part. He was there to protect the integrity of the story. That confrontation sparked a feud that lasted for over a decade. For years, the two men did not speak and made sure to stay out of each other's way in the small world of Hollywood. Denzel has always been a man who values peace, yet he will never choose peace over his own self-respect. This silent war between a legendary actor and a visionary director became a well-known secret among industry insiders. It served as a constant reminder that Denzel is the guardian of his own image and the stories he tells. He was willing to be labeled as difficult if it meant standing up for what he believed was right. The ice finally began to melt years later in a very unexpected way. It turns out that Denzel's daughter, Katia, ended up working as a production assistant on Tarantino's film Django Unchained. This family connection forced the two men to finally sit down and address the elephant in the room. They eventually buried the hatchet and found a way to move past the anger that had started on the set of Crimson Tide. Denzel even admitted later that he liked what Tarantino did with the movie and appreciated the director's unique vision. It took 10 years and a fresh perspective, but they finally found common ground. But all these disagreements pale in comparison to the night Denzel watched his protege lose everything in a single second. 1. Will Smith, the fallen protege. For decades, Denzel Washington stood as the quiet architect of Will Smith's career. Their bond went much deeper than red carpets or box office numbers. Denzel was a mentor in every sense of the word, acting as a spiritual guide for a man who was once the most popular star on the planet. He taught Will how to carry the heavy burden of being a black leading man in an industry that was not always welcoming. They shared a connection rooted in faith and discipline. Denzel shared private wisdom with Will to keep him grounded as he reached the absolute peak of his fame. By the time the 2022 Oscars arrived, it felt like a crowning moment for the two of them. Yet that celebration vanished in the blink of an eye. The world watched in total disbelief as the 2022 Academy Awards turned into a crime scene. While Chris Rock was on stage telling jokes, he made a comment about Jada Pinkett Smith's appearance. Within a few seconds, Will Smith walked up to the stage and struck Chris Rock across the face with a loud, open-handed slap.
Oh, wow! Wow!
It was a moment of pure, unscripted chaos that left every person in that room frozen in shock. Will returned to his seat and continued to shout at the stage, leaving a dark cloud over what was supposed to be the biggest night of his life. The laughter in the room died instantly, replaced by a heavy, uncomfortable silence that felt like it would never end. Denzel Washington was the first person to move toward the fire. During the commercial break, he pulled Will aside along with Tyler Perry to bring some peace to the situation. He did not yell or lecture him. Instead, he prayed with him. When Will eventually went back on stage to accept his Best Actor award for King Richard, he shared the advice Denzel had given him backstage. Denzel told him that at your highest moment, you must be careful, because that is when the devil comes for you. These words were not a condemnation. They were a warning about the dangers of pride and the weight of the spotlight. Even though he was there to support Will, Denzel carried a profound sense of disappointment. He had spent decades carefully building a reputation of professional dignity for black actors. He believed that how you behave when the world is watching is as important as the performance you give on camera. To see a man he mentored lose control so completely felt like a step backward for everything he had worked to achieve. Denzel knows that the mistakes of one prominent figure can often be used to judge an entire community, and he feared that Will had handed his critics the perfect weapon to use against him. Despite his personal feelings, Denzel refused to join the mob that was eager to tear Will down. He eventually spoke out with a level of empathy that many people found surprising. He asked the public who they were to condemn a man for a single bad moment. He remarked that by the grace of God, go any of us, meaning that everyone is capable of making a terrible mistake when they are under enough pressure. Denzel chose to look at the human being behind the mistake rather than the headline itself. He recognized that Will was struggling with internal demons and needed a brother rather than a judge. As we look at the situation from the perspective of 2026, Denzel's take remains the most powerful voice in the room. He has stayed mostly quiet about Will's attempts to return to the spotlight, which speaks volumes about his standards. He proved that you can love someone and still be deeply bothered by their actions. Denzel's role as the moral compass of Hollywood is stronger than ever because he values truth over popularity. He shows that true mentorship involves holding a mirror up to someone, even when the reflection is painful to see. Now, it wasn't just about a slap. It was about the destruction of an image. And that brings us to the most shocking confrontation of all, one that didn't even happen on a movie set. The Listen to Me incident with Ellen Pompeo. While the world was still reeling from the events at the Oscars, a much more personal battle had already taken place on the set of one of the most popular hospital dramas in history. Most people know Ellen Pompeo as the face of Grey's Anatomy, a show she has led for nearly 2 decades. She is a powerhouse in the television world, and a woman who has earned the right to call herself the boss of her own production. In 2016, a unique opportunity arose when the legendary Denzel Washington agreed to step behind the camera to direct a very special episode titled The Sound of Silence. This collaboration happened because of a long-standing friendship between Denzel and Debbie Allen, who is a major producer on the show. Denzel was not there for the paycheck or the fame. He was there as a favor to a friend. He brought his high standards and his absolute devotion to the script with him. In this specific episode, the character of Meredith Grey is brutally attacked by a patient and has her jaw wired shut. It was a heavy, emotional story that required a lot of focus from everyone involved. However, the atmosphere quickly changed from professional to explosive during a scene where Meredith had to confront the man who hurt her. During the rehearsal, the actor playing the patient was not giving the performance that Ellen felt she needed. She decided to improvise a line and screamed at him to look at her when he was apologizing. To her, this was a moment of creative instinct that helped her find the emotion of the scene. To Denzel, this was a total violation of the chain of command. He immediately stepped in and reprimanded her for changing the dialogue without his permission. He told her in no uncertain terms that he was the director and he would be the one to give instructions to the actors. Denzel believes that the script is a finished map and the director is the captain of the ship. Any deviation is seen as an act of ego over the art itself. The situation spiraled into a full-blown screaming match in front of the entire crew. Ellen famously fired back by shouting that this was her show and she was the one who had been there from the beginning. She felt that her years of experience in that role gave her the authority to follow her gut. This was a classic clash of two titans who were both used to being in charge. Denzel did not back down because he does not care about how long you have been on a show or how big your trailer is. He expects a level of set discipline that is often missing in modern television. He views the work as a sacred contract where everyone must play their specific part to achieve excellence. This incident left a lasting mark on both of them. Ellen later spoke about the confrontation on her podcast, describing the day with a mix of respect and lingering frustration. She admitted that while it was a wild experience to go toe-to-toe with a legend, it was also one of the most intense days of her career. For Denzel, the experience seemed to confirm his feelings about the television industry. He has not returned to direct another episode of TV since that project. He was reportedly bewildered by the lack of traditional structure and the way stars are allowed to override the director's vision. The story of what happened in the Grey's Anatomy set is the perfect final example of the Denzel Washington code. Respect is the only currency he accepts. While Hollywood thrives on drama and celebrity power plays, Denzel thrives on discipline and the craft of storytelling. He has spent over 40 years proving that if you do not respect the process, you do not belong in his circle. Whether it is a fellow Oscar winner or the star of a hit TV show, the rules remain the same for everyone. Which of these feuds surprised you most? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. For more content like this, tap on the next video on your screen.